Vav Medalef 96a. We are the first widest set of lines. The fifth to last word is a pasuk which begins Tzadik Ata Hashem. So this pasuk is an intro really to the next story, and it's a pasuk which relays a conversation between the prophet Yirmiyahu and Hashem with respect to the age-old question of trying to understand Hashem's system of reward and punishment and who gets what. So if you think, you feel like you can't figure it out and it's not fair, you should know Jeremiah started, or tried. So
he's the first one who wrote when bad things happen to good people, or something like that.
Yeah, this is the pasuk. Why do bad people prosper?
What?
So Hashem basically, we'll see, tells him, stop trying to figure it out. So don't feel like you're inadequate because you don't understand. The prophet Jeremiah couldn't either. And here's the pasuk. So the pasuk reads like this. So first of all, he begins with saying, Tzadik Ata Hashem. Okay, first of all, God, you're righteous. I acknowledge that. However, Ki Arevei Lecha. If I were to have one argument, so to speak, or one complaint with you, Ach Mishpatim Adaber Ezech, I would talk about your system of judgment or justice.
Who's speaking now?
Jeremiah speaking. Yirmiyahu speaking.
Yirmiyahu.
Madua derech reshayim tzlacha. Why is it that this is the famous words? Madua derech reshayim tzlacha. Why is it that the wicked prosper? These are the famous words. And then I'm looking at the pasuk on the side for the translation. Shalu kol boigdei beged. There's peace for the ones who are treacherous. That's the word I was looking for. Treacherous. Those are like deceptive. Natasam gar shayrasha. You've implanted their vineyard, as if to say like their success is like implanted. It's successful. It's working well. And yelchu gam asu peri. It's grown and it's borne fruit. So they're doing all well. They're doing fantastic. What's going on? Says Jeremiah. So Maya Hadrele, what's God's response? And this is the very next verse. Or a few verses later, actually. It's like this. Ki es raglayim ratzta v'yalucha. When you run on feet and you still get tired, ve'eich teschar es hasusim. How would you outrun the horses? Uva'aretz shalom atabateach. And in the peace of the earth, you are so confident. Ve'eich tasu began hayarden. And how could you, if you're confident in your place on the earth, how could you be confident in your place in the water? So this is what God responds to him. You can't succeed running on feet. How could you succeed running on a horse? You're confident in your walking on the ground, but less so when you're talking about walking in the water or walking in a marsh. So what does God mean here? What's God saying? Okay. So Mashal Adam, it's a parable, so this is the end of the verse. Now this is the Gemara's commentary on that verse and explaining what God meant when he said this somewhat ambiguous verse about walking on the earth versus chasing horses and walking in the water and what this all means. So the Mashal Adam is a parable for a person. Sha'amar, which said, testing his limits, and says, I can run 3 parsais, lefnei asusim, before a horse, meaning that a parsa is 4 mil. No, a parsa is 4 mil. Each mil is a little bit less than a kilometer. So a parsa is about 3.5 kilometers, let's say, roughly, maybe 4 kilometers, somewhere around there. So I can run 3 parsas. So we're talking about, let's say it's 4 kilometers. It's talking about 12 kilometers. Lefnei asusim, before horses. In front of a horse. Bein b'tzei mayim, and I can do so while walking through the water. Meaning, I'm walking through a marsh, which slows you down, and yet I can still run all this time ahead of a horse. This is what someone's daring himself, as if in other words, he's overreaching his capability. So this is like Yirmiyahu, who's asking God how to figure out why the wicked prosper. I'm not saying it's way above your capacity. That's like you thinking you can outrun a horse by a 12-kilometer run while you're in the water, while you're walking through water. It's way beyond you. In fact, the parable goes, a pedestrian meets this guy who thinks he can outrun a horse in the water for 12 kilometers. That's the fun of Gimel Milin Beyabasha. So he started to race or run with this guy for 3 mil, which is less than a parsa, which is 1 mil less than a parsa. And before he was betting he can do on 3 parsa. Vanilla, and he gets tired after 3 mil, which is about, let's say, 2.5, 3 kilometers. Amarle, so the person who he was betting against, showing off that he can outrun a horse in the water for 12 kilometers, and he tells him, if you can't outrun a pedestrian without water, you're going to try to outrun horses. And if for 3 kilometers, 3 mil, you got tired, Gimel Parsois, you're going to go 3 Parsois, which is 4 kilometers, 4 mil each. How much more so you're going to get tired? And if you got tired running in the water, on land, on dry land, how much more so you're going to be out, you'll be tired trying to walk through the marsh. Okay. So in other words, God's telling him, you're way overreaching your capacity. You're like a person who can barely run 3 kilometers on ground who thinks he can outrun horses by 12 kilometers in the water.
So you're saying you're trying to answer that question?
Which is way beyond you.
It's beyond your reach?
Yes, way beyond your reach.
Prosper?
That's correct.
That's sort of the...
Yes. But the way God tells it to him is interesting, and this obviously requires some deeper explanation. God just could have said, like we had in the Gemara other times, this is the way I want it to be, but God gives him this whole metaphor, and which obviously requires understanding, and there's 3 layers of non-understanding. Number 1, you're running too far. You're expecting to run 4 parsa instead of 3 mil. You're expecting to run on water when really you're running on ground. You're expecting to outrun a horse when you can't run out a horse. It's 3 layers of not capability of understanding, and we need to understand how that metaphor matches with the analog, and that there are specifically 3 layers of what Yirmiyahu is overreaching, which in and of itself obviously requires explanation. But this is the story. And then God continues. Now, ma b'schar arbas pesiyos. You should know, however, the following: that for 4 steps that Nebuchadnezzar took, I gave him reward. So ma b'schar, if it is b'schar with the reward for arbas pesiyos for 4 steps, sheshilamti lo isir which I gave to Sanhedrin. The Gemara is soon going to tell us a story. Sanhedrin, Nebuchadnezzar. The Gemara is in the moment going to tell us a story of the 4 steps Nebuchadnezzar took that God rewards him for. And the Gemara is going to tell us later that the reward is that his great-grandchildren, his offspring, studied Torah. I guess they converted. The Gemara is going to tell us the whole story later. So if, for just 4 steps that this wicked person did, he was responsible for destroying the Beis Mikdash, not he himself, but his armies, as we'll learn soon. But he's responsible for the destruction of the temple. And yet for 4 steps that he took, I rewarded him with such great reward. So, Shiratz Acha Kvodi, for 4 steps that this wicked man ran after, he took 4 steps in running for my honor, I rewarded him. At the Tamya, and you're wondering how I was able to reward him for those 4 steps. When I'm going to reward Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the forefathers, Shiratz Ulefan of Kesusim, who ran after me like horses. Alachs Kamakama, much more so. So one thing you can be certain. I can't explain to you why it's like this and why the wicked are prospering, and you can't figure it out. It's like you expecting to run 12 kilometers it's like you expecting to outrun a horse 12 kilometers in a marsh. Not capable of understanding. One thing you could understand, if you see how I rewarded a wicked person for taking 4 steps in my honor, and that his children are scholars, how much more so our forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, how much more so I'm going to reward them. So that you can be confident. That's the one thing God does tell him. And how that works out and how that's going to play out, don't try to figure that out. But one thing you can be confident, that there's a system and it works. So Hanu Tiksiv, and this is the meaning of the verse which reads in Yirmiyahu, Lanavim, to the prophets. I guess Yirmiyahu is kind of talking about himself and maybe his colleagues. Nishbar liba bikirbi, my heart is broken inside of me. Meaning, I resign to the fact that I can't understand. Rachfu kolatz all my bones shuddered. Hayisi ki ish shikar I was like a drunken person, incapable of understanding anything. Ukigever avru yayin, and like a man whose wine has passed over him, inebriated. Mipnei Hashem, before God. Mipnei divrei kachem, before His holy words. In other words, I trembled, I shuddered, I was brokenhearted, and I can completely not comprehend what he's saying, and I just had to resign to the fact that I cannot comprehend what he's saying. Okay. So end commentary and conversation between Yirmiyahu and Hashem. Now comes what's the story of the 4 steps. And this is a fantastic story. Okay. Hani dal parsois, these psiyos, these 4 steps that Nebuchadnezzar took to defend God's honor, for which God rewarded him. Mahi, what was the story behind it? So the verse reads like this. Be'esi, at that time, pre-destruction, Shalach Mardon Baladon ben Baladon, the predecessor of Nebuchadnezzar, whose name was, how do you pronounce it? Merodach. Merodach Baladin, son of Baladin. Melech Bavel, the king of Bavel. Svardim, he sent a letter, etc. And the verse goes on to say he sent a letter and gifts to Chizkiyahu, who was the king at the time, the king just before the destruction, who we learned about before that God wanted to make him Mashiach, that individual. And we learned about how there was a miracle, how he was sick and God miraculously cured him. So after he was cured, the king, whose name was Merodach Baladin, son of Baladin, sent letters of greeting and gifts, Mishum Kichol Chizkiyahu, because he was sick, Vayechzak, and he got healed. Mishum Chizkiyahu, because he got sick, and Vayechzak, and he got healed. So therefore the king of Bavel decided to send him gifts. So Shadolei Svardim, he sent books, letters, Umincha, and a gift, Lidrosh HaMoifetz Asher Haya Ba'aretz, to seek out after the wonder, the miracle that happened in the land of Eretz Yisrael, and that Chizkiyahu was miraculously saved. So what was the story? What was the miracle? So the Rabbi Yochanan says, Oisei Hayoim, that day that he got healed, the Oisei Hayoim Shemeis Boi, the day that, the day that Achaz died. Achaz was the king in the north. No, he's just before Chizkiyahu. Sorry, he's just before Chizkiyahu. So the day he died, Shtei Shoyes Haya, 2 hours were taken from that day. V'chichola Chizkiyahu, and when Chizkiyahu got sick, v'itzbach, and got healed, Adrinu Kuchabrichu Lahanach Eser Shoi Niala. Sorry, my apologies. 2 hours were taken. Sorry. The day that Achaz died was only a 2-hour day. 10 hours were missing. The day that Chizkiyahu got sick and then was healed, God took those 10 hours and gave it to that day, extending the day to 18 hours long. To 22 hours long. The day, not the whole 24-hour cycle. The day. The 12-hour day became a 22-hour day. The Ksiv, as the verse reads, God says like this. The verse reads, Hinni meshiv esel hamalois, I'm going to move the shadows of the sundials, asher yardim malois Achaz, which went down in the shadows, in the sundials of Achaz, the previous king, the shemesh of the sun, acharonis, backwards, eser miles, by 10 degrees, or 10 hours. Vateshiv hashemes, eser miles, b'miles asher yarda, and the sun returned the 10 degrees that it went down in degrees. So the verse is basically saying that God took the 10 degrees on the sundial, the 10 hours that was lost at the time that Achaz died, and returned it on the day that Chizkiyahu was healed.
Was he good, this Achaz?
No.
It was a wicked.
The reverse. Have a good day.
He had a brother called Tuchas.
No, Achaz was not a good king, and Chizkiyahu cleaned up act, actually.
Yeah.
That's why God says he wants to make Chizkiyahu Mashiach, because Chizkiyahu really cleaned up act in a time that wasn't so fantastic. Okay, so long story short, there was 10 hours deducted from the life, from the time of Achaz, the day that Achaz died, and was given to the day Chizkiyahu became healed. Now, why is that? Because, where's the Rashi?
They shouldn't mourn for him for 2 hours.
Yeah. The day, but why? So it was taken away from Achaz because God didn't want him to mourn for too long. The day should go down and should be over. Yeah. He should die and he should be gone. And it was given to Chizkiyahu the day he was healed, and that way there's more time to praise Hashem and be joyous over the miracle that happened. Okay.
Why only 2 hours?
That's how long he needed to bury him, I assume. Just need enough time for him to die and be buried, and that's the end of it. But then when Chizkiah is healed, give him an extra 10 hours to celebrate.
Sure.
Okay. So Amar Le. So now it goes like this. Now back to the story. So the verse said that on the day he was healed, the king, Meradach, sent messages and gifts to Chizkiah because he wanted to find out about this great, fantastic miracle. So let's get to the background of that story. Now we know what the great miracle was, that there was 10 hours added to the day. So Amruleh, or Amar Lahu, he told his ministers, what happened in Jerusalem? I heard about this story. Amar Leh, so the people, his ministers told him, Chizkiyahu, the king of Jerusalem, Chizkiyahu Chalash became sick, and got healed in this miraculous fashion. So this Meradach, this king said, the king of Bavel, the predecessor of Nebuchadnezzar, said, Ikra Gavra Kihai. There is such an amazing individual living on this earth. And I'm not going to send a messaging of greetings, a letters of greeting. The Baladan, and he's not going to get greetings from Baladan, meaning referring to himself. Now, Ahishaita, that time, Lo Yavahasam. At that time, Nebuchadnezzar wasn't present. And Nebuchadnezzar was a minister or an advisor to this Meradach Baladan. And he wasn't present at the time when Meradach Baladan decided to send a letter of greetings to Chizkiah. But Kiasa, when Nebuchadnezzar arrived, Amr Lahu, he asked everybody, and the king included, Heichi Kasvinu, what did you write? What was the greetings you wrote? You sent the greetings to the Chizkiah. What were the greetings you wrote? Amruleh, so they told Nebuchadnezzar like this. Right, Nebuchadnezzar is not king yet. He's still an advisor to the previous king, Meradach Baladan. Amruleh, so they told him like this. Hachi Kasvinan, this is what we said. This is what we wrote. Oh yeah, I skipped a line. I knew I was missing something. Okay, back up a second. Sorry, back up 2 lines. Amar, I realized something was missing. I skipped the line. Amar, so back up a second. So Nebuchadnezzar, Meradach Baladan is speaking to his ministers and says, Ika Gavra Kihai, there's such a great person. We're not going to send him greetings. Kisfule, this is what you should write. So Nebuchadnezzar, Meradach Baladan is dictating to his messengers what they should write to Chizkiah. And he said, Shalom Alamalka, 3 things. Peace be unto the king, Chizkiah. Shalom Lakarta Jerusalem, peace be unto the capital Jerusalem. And Shalom Lakah, peace be unto your God. 3 greetings. Greetings to you, O king, greetings to your capital, and greetings to your God. Lalakar Rabba, to your great God. Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar Safed Baladan Hava. Safed Baladan. Nebuchadnezzar was on the council of Baladan, but he wasn't there at the time. And when he arrived, Amalahu, so he asked the crowd who sent the message to Chizkiah on behalf of Meradach Baladan, Hey Kasvinu, what did you write? They said to him, this is what we wrote. We wrote, greetings to you, O king, greetings to your city, and greetings to your God. So he said, Amrullahu, so Nebuchadnezzar told them, Karisole Elakarabba, you call him a great God. Your 3rd greeting, you said, greetings to you, O king, greetings to your capital, and greetings to your great God. You called him a great God because you know and you're giving him greetings last? First king, then capital, and God? If he's a great God, put him first. Amar, so he said, Allah kasvu, this is what you should be writing. Shalom lalaka, peace be unto your God. Lakarab, great to your great God. Shalom lakar to Jerusalem, peace be unto your city. Shalom malka Chizkiah, and peace be to the king. So reverse the order. Not king, capital God, but God, capital king. Amrilay, so the king told him, okay, Kraina de Igrisa, Ilever Pravanka. The author of the letter, let him be the messenger. So it's your idea to change the text, no problem. You change the text and you go deliver it. Raat Basrei. He ran after the messenger. The messenger's already left with the old message. So he started running after it to bring it back and to edit the letter that it should say God's name first. When he ran 4 steps, Asa Gabriel the angel, arrived, and stopped him. So that the message went to Chizkiyahu in the original version, where God's listed last. Peace be king, peace be unto you, O city, and peace be unto God. Stopping Nebuchadnezzar from defending God's honor and putting God's name first. Before the Gemara continues the story, the Gemara says, Amar Bechan said, if Gabriel did not come and stop Nebuchadnezzar, there would be no hope for the haters of the Jews. It's a euphemism. Haters of the Jews actually means the Jews themselves. There would be no hope for the Jews, God forbid. Meaning to say, when Nebuchadnezzar came to destroy the temple, there were obviously some survivors, many, and had he stopped this messenger and thus this actually defended God's honor and putting God's name first in the letter, he would have had so much merit that the Jewish people would have no hope. From the fact that he was stopped, he was given reward for walking those 4 steps, but wasn't given enough merit to overrun the Jews completely, and thus there were survivors. So this is a critical moment in Jewish history. Now the Gemara comments. Okay, so this is the story with the four steps, and this is why he got rewarded later, because he tried at least to change the content of the letter to reflect God's superiority and God's honor, and that God's name should be mentioned first in the greetings. So the Gemara says like this. So we mentioned before that the king's name was Meradach Baladin, son of Baladin. So said the Gemara, my Baladin ben Baladin. What does this mean? He's Baladin ben Baladin. Usually, fathers and sons don't have the same name. At least not ordinarily. Sometimes they have, something junior. But so what does it mean, Baladin ben Baladin, son of Baladin? Amri Baladin Malka Hava. They say like this, that the original king. So this is we're talking about 3 kings here. Baladin is the original king. His son Meradach Baladin, and then his successor Nebuchadnezzar. So at the moment right now, Meradach Baladin is king, and we're talking about his father, and we're trying to understand why he's carrying his father's name in his name, Meradach Baladin, when his father's name was Baladin. The Gemara explains like this: Baladin Malkava, the father Baladin was a king. Ve'ishtini Appa, and his face changed. V'hava Kida Kalba, and it looked like a dog. He looked deformed. So it was embarrassing for him to hold court. It looked terrible. So he had his son and future successor sitting in his chair. So his son, Meradach, was sitting in his place. But B'Havakasiv, when he would write official letters on behalf of the king, he's not the actual king. He's the acting king. He's the acting monarch. He's sitting on the chair of his father Baladin. So when he would write official documents, Havakasiv Shmei, he would write his own name because he's signing, Meradach. V'Shmei Davua, and he would add his father's name to Baladin. So he would call himself Meradach Baladin, as if to say, Meradach, who's sitting in the place of Baladin. Because his father was truly the king. V'Shmei Davua Baladin Malka, and the name of his father, Baladin the king. Hainu Diksiv, this is the meaning of the verse which reads, Ben Yechabed Av, a son who honors his father, the Eved Adonov, and a servant honors his master, referring to the people in Babylonia, the kings of Babylonia. So here you have the Babylonian king, Meradach, honoring his father, and that he's sitting in the king's chair, and if he wanted to, he could just effectively become the monarch. But yet, in every official document, he would say, Meradach Baladin, as if to say, I'm only speaking in my father's name. So he's adding honor to his father. Alright, but the verse continues and said that there's a servant who honors his master. Who's that? We have the son who's so Ben Yechaved of the meaning of the verse which reads that there's a son who honors the father. Had Amram, we just finished saying that Meradach would honor his father Baladin by putting his name on the signatures because he was only acting king. The Eved Adonov, who is this servant who's honoring his master? The Ksiv of the verse reads as follows in describing the actual destruction. In the 5th month. Which month is the 5th month? Av. Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av. We count from Nisan. The 5th month. Be'eser l'chodesh, in the 10th day of the month, the day after Tisha B'Av. Which is why they're still mourning on the 10th day, because the burning was still happening. So Be'eser l'chodesh chamishi, and on the 5th month, Be'eser l'chodesh, on the 10th day, the 10th day of Av, Hishnas Teishes Eser Shana l'Melech Nebuchadnezzar, Melech Bavel, in the 19th year to the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylonia. Nebuchadnezzar, who succeeded Meradach, son of Baladin. Bar Nebuzaradin, Nebuzaradan, who was a leading centurion, leading fighter for Nebuchadnezzar's army. So he arrived in Jerusalem, or he was in Jerusalem. He came a little earlier, but he was in Jerusalem. Rav HaTabachim. They referred to Nebuzaradan as the master of slaughter. He was particularly brutal because he was the one that was responsible. He was the one that he was Nebuchadnezzar's emissary or agent to destroy the temple and essentially murder as many Jews as he possibly can. And is described in Eicha at length the carnage that he inflicted on the Jewish people. So the verse describes that this Nebuzaradan, master of slaughtering, this mass murderer, so he arrived in Jerusalem. Amad lefnei melech Bavel b'Yerushalayim. He stood in the presence of the king of Babylonia while in Jerusalem. The Yisuf at Beis Hashem, and burnt down the house of God, describing the destruction of the temple. There's Beis HaMelech, and the house of the king, meaning the palace that Shlomo Melech had built, inherited by his great-great-great-grandkids, Chizkiyahu, and then Tzidkiyahu. And then Tzidkiyahu is the last king. So, the verse implies that Nebuzaradan did this in the presence of his king, Nebuchadnezzar. So the Gemara asks, top of Perek Chelek Vav Mid Beis, 96b, Umisalat Nebuchadnezzar l'Yerushalayim? Did Nebuchadnezzar himself arrive in Jerusalem? He didn't. He sent his agent, Nebuzaradan. The verse says elsewhere, Vayalu oisai el melech Bavel Rivlasa. The people went to go meet the king of Bavel in a place called Rivlasa. Va'amar Ababo, and Ababo he said, Zu Antuchia. This is a place called Antuchia, not in Israel. So what does it mean that Nebuzaradan is destroying the temple in the presence of Nebuchadnezzar? He wasn't there. Nebuchadnezzar sent Nebuzaradan. Nebuchadnezzar is hanging out somewhere else, while his dogs, his agents, this Nebuzaradan mass murderer, he's doing the work. So explains the Gemara, Rav Chizda, Rav Yitzchak bar Rav Dimi. Rav Chizda and Rav Yitzchak son of Rav Dimi explained what it means when the verse said Nebuzaradan destroyed the temple in the presence of Nebuchadnezzar, even though we know for a fact Nebuchadnezzar was not present. What does it mean? Chadamar one says, his engraven image was engraved in all of the chariots. So every single chariot of Nebuzaradan's army, and Nebuzaradan is working for Nebuchadnezzar, had the image of Nebuchadnezzar on it. So as if he was there. One explanation. The Chadamar, and the other says that Nebuzaradan had this great awe, fear, and reverence for his king Nebuchadnezzar. He's a general in Nebuchadnezzar's army, so he had this great fear of his king Nebuchadnezzar. And even while he's in Jerusalem, and Nebuchadnezzar is miles away in this place called Antuchia, but the fear of Nebuchadnezzar was so strong, it was as if he was standing in his presence. And therefore, this is the explanation of the verse which said that there's a son who honors the father. That's Nebuchadnezzar's predecessor, Merodach, who added the name Baladin to his signatures to honor his father. And the verse which says, Ve'eved Adonov, and there's a servant who honors his master, that's Nebuzaradan, this mass murderer who honored his master so much to the point that even though his master was miles away, he behaved and he was felt as if he was in the presence of his master. So even from you see from the verse an unbelievable thing, that even from those who are oppressors, literally mass murderers, destroy the temple, the verse finds a way to teach us a lesson in honoring our parents and in honoring our master, our ultimate master being Hashem himself. And the same way that this mass murderer Nebuzaradan went about his business of murdering Jews in a terrible sense, with the awe and reverence of this king being present, even though he wasn't present, how the more so as Jews on the positive side, Meruba Midatayva, the Gemara says, that the measure of good has to be much greater than the measure of negative. So if in the negative sense, Nebuzaradan had this great fear of his master being there, Nebuchadnezzar, even though his master wasn't there, so much more so, when we serve Hashem, and even if we don't see, we have to have the awe and reverence as if we can feel Hashem's presence right here, because indeed that's the truth, He is right here with us. So this is the incredible story of Nebuchadnezzar trying to defend God's honor and walking those 4 steps and then being stopped while he was still a minister in his predecessor Merodach's council, and the story of Merodach honoring his father Baladin, and the story of Nebuchadnezzar destroying the temple, and while doing so had this great awe and fear for his king, Nebuchadnezzar. Have a wonderful Shabbos and a wonderful Chodesh.